there, everybody. My name is Adam Clery, or is it? And I've just seen The Matrix Resurrections, or have I? And before I start, I need to make two things perfectly clear to you. First of all, this is a spoiler review of the brand new Matrix film, so if you are on your way to see the movie, or if you are desperately trying to avoid any spoilers, this is fair warning. They will be discussed, things will be spoiled, and as we all know, whose responsibility is it for you to avoid spoilers? It's yours. If you said you, meaning me, then you're wrong, because it's me, meaning you in this case. That's sentiment number one. Sentiment number two is just... F*** me. Alright, so first things first, a really quick plot recap of what we thought we knew going in. This is the fourth movie in the Matrix series. It is what is known as a legacy sequel, in that it's kind of building on the stuff that came before. Not a direct sequel, because time has passed, you've kind of got to reframe the world a bit, but it is a continuation of the story we originally saw, including its two central characters, Neo and Trinity. We don't really know what's going on with anybody else. There is a man who appears to be Morpheus. There is somebody who has a big Agent Smith vibe. We know that they're in the real world and in the Matrix, but what's happened, what's gone on in the time between, why they are back in there now, what they're doing, that was kind of all left unclear by the trailers. All we knew was there was going to be loads of explosions and loads of Keanu Reeves going... And it transpires that wasn't a million miles away from the truth. Basically, we are picking things up back in The Matrix, or A Matrix, and Neo Thomas Anderson has been reinserted back into the power plant. He is in this fantasy world, except what's made perfectly clear at the start is that the Matrix does exist, only it's not this control system the machines have for enslaving humanity. It's a video game that game director Thomas Anderson made in 1999 that became this huge trilogy that made this company billions of dollars and made him one of the most famous faces in the entertainment industry. He has struggled with his perception of reality. Sometimes he falls back into feeling that maybe he is in the Matrix and maybe all those events were real, but he used this experience, this fantasy he had, to build a video game that everybody's heard of. The Matrix is a thing that everybody knows exists. Everybody knows the story of the Matrix, and it just happens to be the story that you saw in those first three films, right down to the most minute details. And that's, I mean, as creative decisions go, that is a hell of a one. I need to get my voice to warble properly. That is a hell of a creative decision to make going in, to basically reframe the entire world of your first three films as now, did it happen? Didn't it happen? Was it a video game? Were we just seeing out the events as they were fictionalized in the imagination of this man, Thomas Anderson, or is something amiss? Is this world now a bit of a like, it's just, look, it's mind-bending. The opening is mind-bending because they make you question whether or not the Matrix itself even happened, which does kind of put you in the shoes of the protagonist, Keanu Reeves, Thomas Anderson. We don't hear mention of Neo for ages at the first part of the film. You have to sit there, as he does, and question, well, was it all real? What did it all mean? And then it gets incredibly weird because the guy who's running the video game company, he feels a lot like Agent Smith, and they even joke, they even start quoting lines from the movie, and then Carrie-Anne Moss, she's kicking around, he thinks he meets Trinity, and there's this vibe, he knows her from somewhere, but he's introduced to her as Tiffany, a mother of three, described as a effing MILF by one of his colleagues. It's all just uncanny. Everything is there. Everybody knows what went on. The Matrix is real, just not as real as it was in the first three films. Like, as an opening to a fourth Matrix film, wow! And that's the thing, they pretty much shot for shot, line for line, recreate the original Matrix trilogy in the first act of this movie. They are constantly, either tongue-in-cheek or accidentally, referencing things in the Matrix. They are quoting lines for it, they are showing you footage from it. Neo even has a bust on his desk, like some of this crap, which is Trinity falling down from the building, shooting up from the famous image he had from the last two films. Like, it's a knowing nod and wink to everything that came before it. And I think, for this reason, and we'll get into all the other reasons, This is going to end up being one of the most divisive movies you have ever seen. From there, it all becomes its own film. Once we get past all the references and the nods and the winks and everything, you kind of start to see what the story actually is, why it all feels like a recreation of the first Matrix, because it is a recreation of the first Matrix. They're trying to basically do other things. Now there is a new Matrix, and there's all this. I'll get into all this other stuff in a second, but it does become its own film. It has its own story with its own scenes and its own moments from about an hour in, and it's at that exact hour in moment that it's either gonna lose you or you're gonna love it. So just to quickly fill you in on the rest of the plot, what has transpired is that Neo and Trinity were indeed killed at the end of the third Matrix film, but this led to a machine civil war. Peace did reign across the Earth. They left Zion alone as they promised they were going to, but this created an energy shortage in the machine world. And as we learn, nothing drives conflict like scarcity, and the machines began attacking the machines. So, wanting to solve that problem, a new program was created, kind of like the architect that came before him, but this gun is a bit more wily. He kind of realizes that the key to the Matrix is not choice. It's not any of the stuff that came before. The key to the Matrix is Trinity and Neo. Now you're sitting there going, why is that, Adam? Well, I've seen the film. I don't really know why. They do sort of explain that, but it just kind of is. For the plot to advance, it just kind of is. And there's quite a lot of that. But there's a few things in this which I'm going to definitely need a second watch. You might need a second watch. Everybody might need a second watch to fully get their head around. It does feel like they explain all this stuff all the way through, but a lot of it just is. Why is this happening? Well, it just is. And why are they doing that? Well, they just are. Okay, are you having fun? I am. So they then take the dead corpses of Trinity and Neo and they physically rebuild their bodies. There's some quite gory scenes of them physically rebuilding inside and out Trinity and Neo, and they put them back into the Matrix in their own special pods, crucially where they are close enough to get that magic energy synergy thing going on, but not so close like two ends of a battery where they ever combine and destroy the whole thing, which is why he feels like he knows her, why he sees her around, but crucially they don't actually know each other. It's actually quite a heartfelt story they start telling about how he's always known, always sensed she was there, and so is she, but the reality has seemed so complete that they didn't know how to do it. And the mastermind behind this is Neil Patrick Harris's The Analyst. He presents himself as Keanu Reeves' therapist. That's just because he's trying to control him and reassure him that everything is as it's. You can't go back to that fantasy land because he doesn't want him to, because he is the one who has rebuilt this Matrix. And now everybody's back in it. Yes, the human, there's still a degree of peace going on, mostly because they're leaving them alone, but the machines are now thriving because they've got Trinity and Neo back. And that's kind of all you need to know going into it. They've rebuilt the Matrix, and it is all not what as it seems, and they do eventually get Neo out, and he goes back to Io, which is the new version of Zion, and the machines and the humans actually live in harmony. The difference between us and them, as we're told, is just them changed what that means. Some people don't want to come out of the Matrix, some people do, and now there is still two sides to the war, but it's not just human and machines. There's some combination there, which is a nice twist. And this is the thing. All that story stuff aside, it sounds like a fairly fresh original idea, and it is, but it also sounds like a quote-unquote love letter to the original trilogy, which it also is. And the thing about Matrix Resurrections is that if you asked me what it's about, the answer is not about Trinity or about Neo or about the war between man and machine. It's not really, it doesn't even feel like a dystopian sci-fi film or something about augmented or virtual reality. The film, The Matrix Resurrections, is a film about the Matrix, and not the mind control system that an army of machines use to enslave humanity. It's about the Matrix as in the three films you've already seen at the turn of the millennium. It is self-referential, it knows everything that happened there, it knows everything you think about what happened there, and it's simultaneously trying to rewrite a few narrative threads whilst wrapping up some other ones at the same time, all the while kind of sitting behind you in the cinema, tapping you on the shoulder going, do you remember that bit? Do you remember that bit? That was, hey, who's that? Yeah. And that's why it's going to be divisive. And the thing is, I'm trying to set my stall down right in the middle of this movie because I know there's going to be some huge Matrix fans that love this and some huge Matrix fans that hate this. And I know there's going to be some casual people who just go to the cinema because, I remember the Matrix films, they were quite good, and some of them are going to come out thinking it's amazing, and some of them are going to come out thinking it's one of the worst things they've ever seen. And I'm going to set my stall out for you here. The duality of man, I simultaneously think I've just seen one of the weirdest, messiest, most nonsensical, most what are you doing movies I have ever seen in my life. And also, I would be lying if I said I did not have a really good time doing it. Because that's what they've done here. That is ostensibly the conceit of The Matrix Resurrections, is that it's such a complex narrative movie to get back into that you were going to have to do something huge to justify picking up this story again. You had to do something mind-bending and off the wall just to simply get the ball rolling. So obviously, it's going to be confusing and it's going to be all over the place and it's going to be totally messy. But have they pulled off the majority of what they're trying to do here? Yeah, the story's actually quite compelling and heartfelt. The central performances are actually really good and carry the movie through a lot of the weirder moments. The action scenes both simultaneously take you back to all those things you felt when you first saw the first Matrix movie and manage to build on them. They do things here which aren't... I'm going to interrupt myself. I had a criticism of the two sequels and I thought the effects let it down. It felt a bit rubbery. It felt a bit like, oh, let's try and do as much as we can even though the technology hasn't quite caught up. Whereas the first film I felt was them looking at the technology and working out what they could do with that. This film, genuinely, I think has such much better effects work than the two sequels. And I know that it's been like 18 years, I know it should have, but I just mean even from a conceptual standpoint, what they try to do is much smarter and much more engaging, never mind better executed. There's so much to like about this film if you just enjoy the ride. And I think what's going to win a lot of people over is just how much fun everybody is having with this. Like, a lot of people are going to come out of that movie being like, oh, what a cynical Hollywood cash grab. And it is a cynical Hollywood cash grab. All love letters to old franchises are. But at the same time, everybody in this movie is having great fun, and that endears the entire project to you. Like, Yahya Abdul-Mateen plays not Morpheus. He's presented as like a version of Morpheus that Neo wrote as part of a game a while ago, and it's partly Smith, and he's an original character, but he's presented as a version of Morpheus, and he keeps referencing Morpheus. He keeps you can see he is having the time of his life getting to use Lawrence Fishburne's lines and some of his mannerisms, and it's just, there's a lot of that all the way through. Jonathan Groff as well plays Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith, and it actually is Agent Smith this time. He managed to save himself, and he put himself somewhere else, and he put himself near to Neo because he just knew that they should be doing stuff together, and he plays it like Hugo Weaving, but you can see he's having a lot of fun while he's doing it as well. Like, there are so many cameos and references and slight recastings. It feels, I don't know, I don't know how to explain this film without saying simply, it had to be mad. A lot of the things it's going to get criticised for, it had no other choice but to do that. And by and large, it pretty much nailed every single one of it. It's not perfect. It is a mess. I had to physically stop watching it once or twice and just go, oh, you are not doing this, are you? But then 15 minutes later, I had to sort of hold my hands up and be like, oh, well, you did do this, did you? Oh, well, it's pretty good. And the one thing I hope comes across in this review is the energy I have to talk about it. I was not one of the people who thought this movie needed to happen. I was not in any rush to see them make it. I was not convinced there was a story for them to do, and yet I've come away from it wanting to talk about it, wanting to talk about the possibilities, wanting to talk about the decisions they've made, wanting to query and clarify some of the things I thought about it, some of the things it implied which it didn't necessarily say, and some of the things it said and what that necessarily implies. If you like the Matrix movies, if you still like the Matrix movies, there is so much to like about Matrix Resurrections. If you sat there for 18 years theorizing about how they could ever do another one and really wanting them to do another one, I think maybe it might not live up to your expectations of that. Maybe it will, but it might underwhelm you because you had such bold ambitions for it. I will say, it tries to skirt around from being as big as the two sequels and having as big implications as the two sequels were world-ending stuff. You know, it's the fate of humanity. It swerves that and tells a far more personal story, which is, in effect, it trying to wrap up all the narrative threads from the trilogy by saying, do you know what? It was never about a war versus man and machine. That was the backdrop. That was the Titanic in Titanic. Titanic's not about Titanic. It's about Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. It's about Jack and Rose. The Matrix is not about the impending iceberg of the apocalypse that humanity's crashing into in this war. It is about Trinity and Neo. It's about, effectively, the one variable you cannot account for with all the computing power in the world. It's just the connection between the human spirit. And I think if you were ever going to pick the Matrix back up, that's probably how you had to do it. Like, is it a great film? Is it a masterpiece? Am I blown away by what I've seen? No, not exactly. But I've had a really nice time being told a really nice story that just happened to have loads of explosions. Oh, and zombies now. Yeah, just going to address a few things that people might not like. It does kind of become a bit of a zombie film at the end. Now there is swarm mode in the Matrix. They can just turn everybody into a rampaging, scary bot character, and then they all just go at it. It's a fairly lazy device in order to create some tension at the end, but one that does lend itself to an incredible action sequence. There's a few things that just, as I mentioned, just happen, kind of for the sake of happening. Indeed, the very ending of the film, Keanu Reeves basically turns to Carrie-Anne Moss and just says, "Why is this happening?" And she basically looks at him and goes, "Well, I don't know. Guess it has to so we can end the film." The new cast are all really good as well. The characters they introduce, they all feel like they fit in this world. They all feel like they understand the legacy, like both in canon and in the real world, of what the previous films did. I could go around in circles here, telling you every little minute detail, but I will say this. If you are worried about this film because you care about The Matrix, you'll be fine. It delivers. It does not let you down. If you're going to scrutinize it to an inch of its life, it will fall apart very easily. So my advice to you, dear Whatculture viewer / moviegoer / Matrix fan, is don't do that. It's spend 2.5 hours of your life enjoying yourself back in the Matrix. And that leaves me with one final thing to touch on, which I think segues very nicely from me telling you to just try and enjoy yourself, and that is this. There is a lot of things in this movie that you could interpret it to be about. Wherever you are, politically, socially, whatever your personality type is, there is probably just enough in this movie that you could latch onto that and say, do you know what? It's actually about this hot button issue, this conversation of our time, this social or political discourse. That's what it's trying to say. And all the various things that you could say that it's about are contradictory, they're conflicting, and none of them are really what it's about. It's just a nice story between two people at the heart of this dystopian, post-apocalyptic, etc., etc. There may well be a lot of people saying a lot of things about this movie just to try and get their own points across. And I worry that we may see a lot of arguments between two people who have both fundamentally misunderstood the Matrix Resurrections on purpose just so they can be annoying on the internet. So I encourage you to go and see this film and have a really nice time doing it, and remember how good the Matrix can be when it's done well, and then forget about it. Just log off. Go outside. Surely there's one message we can take from a movie about human beings being plugged into this scary big machine where everything is horrible and scary. Surely if there's one thing we can take from that, it's let's not do it ourselves. Let's go outside. Let's just be excellent to one another, please. And that, in so much as it was just me immediately finishing the movie and then rambling down a camera, is our review of The Matrix Resurrections. I had a lovely time watching that film. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's a brilliant movie, because I think the criteria for being a brilliant movie probably misses all of them, but everything it does really well. Everything it tries to do kind of works. There's enough that I have enjoyed this film. Really enjoyed it, in fact, and I think you might too. But when you have seen it, let us know what you made of it all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I'll put it this way, rarely do you see a legacy movie and want to rewatch that as much as you do the originals. Normally you see them and you immediately go back to the stuff that did it right the first time. I am now as up for seeing The Matrix 4 again as I am for seeing Matrix 1, 2 and 3, and I think that is big praise. Anyway, I've been Adam Clery. Please get me on Twitter at Adam Clery. I would genuinely love to know what everybody thinks about this, but in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. This has been Whatculture. This has been, took me ages to find that, took me ages to get that up, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.